Hello there everyone, this is I am Mark 3 and welcome back to FTD Small Fries. And I'm afraid I'm not in the campaign right now, I am in the Vehicle Designer. Yes, this still exists. I haven't used it in the videos in this series yet, I don't think, but yes, here we are. I mentioned at the end of last time that design would need to be looked at and do some reworking, and I have done some of that. And I even took up Damadoc on his suggestion in the comments to look over some of my stuff. And I was quite surprised by what I found. I mean, I know I'm very prolific in building designs and not finishing designs, and then I just build them, then lose interest and don't come back. And yeah, but I went through my quote-unquote recent designs and I found all of these. This is just the recent stuff. Admittedly, like a bunch of these are incomplete and will need work, but some are ready for immediate use. They just never got used for anything at all. And I've also done some work on the destroyer upgrade as well. The actual destroyer to the current blueprint has decided to wander off apparently. But yeah, we're going to be looking through these, and then for the rest of the episode I'm going to be working on getting this blank hull, which is a blank copy of the existing destroyer hull, which we've been using so far in this series, by the by, fitted out with some new gear, which I've developed on this fortress over here. So yeah, there is that. Oop, is that a collision? No, that's a flyer. Okay, never mind. Will you stop wandering around, you flipping... stop. We are off to a smashing start. I think we can take that as a sign that the destroyer does not appreciate us tampering with its already quote-unquote perfect design. It blew up the test platform with all the test weaponry to upgrade it. That was very specific vandalism there. I am very suspicious. Oh well, I'll just have to spawn it back in again. Alright, Mr. Destroyer has been locked away using a docking platform. He can't sabotage our tests again. He's just going to sit here for comparison's sake and to contemplate the consequences of his actions. Or her actions. I don't know if it's a he or a she. Aggressive no matter what, so there is that, I suppose. Anyway, we're going to start going through the craft we've got here, and I'll explain what's going on. I've got a bunch of designs that are complete, I've got a bunch that are partially complete, and I've got a bunch that are basically just that didn't make it past concept stage and need some serious reworking. So I'm going to go through these, and I think I'm going to say with the incomplete slash concept stage crafts, just making sure. Yeah, that was a concept. Oh, that one's complete, but it's actually something. That one's partially complete. Let's bring up the... there's one more complete design. Let's bring up the laser escort as well, actually. I wanted to be there. Right. I'll bring it here too. Laser escort, come here. Thank you. Right. So, for the incomplete slash prototype, I'm going to listen to the comments, I think, as to what I try to bring in first, or complete first, or that kind of thing. I think I've got it all... Yeah, unless something has just wandered off. I don't think it has. So, let's go over what we've got. Whoops. Okay. Accidental weapons fire, nothing to worry about. So, we're going to start with the familiar. What we've got here is the simple escort hull. Nothing unusual here. You saw this in the previous part, I believe it was. One thing I will note in terms of a change I've made is I've swapped out one of the ammo boxes for an ACB here, which is going to provide a constant command if there's an enemy present for forward thrust, and I've keyed the rear thrusters to forward thrust as well, so this means it'll be more aggressively moving around during actual combat, because that's what got some killed at the end of the last part. It's like they were dithering around and got shot for it. So nothing else here, really. Next up, we've got the Missile Escort, which is actually the older sibling of the Simple Hull. It is actually feature complete. It's not quite as modular. It's a bit bigger, as you can see. It's actually slightly faster as well, believe it or not. But it comes pre-armed with a large swarm of self-guiding fragmentation missiles. And that is a large swarm. 4, 8, 12, 24, 48 missiles to go, and it has enough ammo on it for 2 salvos. Then it will steadily chain fire missiles after that. Though if there are other craft around to supply it with ammo, its rate of fire increases greatly. So this thing is like a saturation type of craft. And it's relatively cheap as well. It's 15k to deploy. It, like its younger sibling, it doesn't have shielding though, so there is that. Next up, we've got a bit of an oddity, which is one of my few completed helicopter designs. Damodoc was interested in this one because he said it's very rare to see such a thin helicopter, like it's literally only 5 blocks across, including detection and weapon pods. The missiles are fairly beefy, but they are long-range frag warheads, fairly good tracking. So again, self-guiding, but this guy actually hangs back and lobs shots like an asshole sniper kind of design. And it's fairly maneuverable as well. It's very good at keeping in the air actually, and sometimes it does a barrel roll if it's trying to avoid hitting something. So there is that. It does a barrel roll. It does a barrel roll. In general, though, supports Starcrafts, and deployment cost is only 11,000. Oi! It's not your turn yet. Go away. Are you active? I think you're active, aren't you? You're the siege test. Yes, a bunch of this stuff doesn't even have names, honestly. They're just like, test this, test that, test something else. Everything seems to be trying to sabotage our tests at the moment. Anyway, yeah. So that's a support chopper, again, relatively cheap design. Should be agile enough to bring in, though. These 3 designs so far are very vulnerable to enemy missile fire. They don't have active defenses or anything. Next up is the MSU, or rather Missile Support Unit. As you can see, it is a very flat pancake, and it's actually a double hull design built around a single large missile launcher. So yeah, this thing is again another standoff fire support type. Dan suggested switching this thing to a high-X missile rather than a frag missile, and I think that would work better overall for it. But it can be brought in as is. It should be functional for 14,000. So again, we're getting a rough ballpark for these smaller flyer craft, like 10 to 15k for most of them, it seems. Oh yeah, I forgot to give you the internal view of these guys. Hang on. Missile Explorer, Escort, is about as simple can be. It's a good bit more expensive than the one that followed it, but as I said, it is faster and has more armament and stuff as well. So the engine's tucked in at the back here. It's got the missile system on both sides to control into a single one. It's got the AI core after that, which is guided purely by a wild snooper, so it's not for precision work. It's purely saturation. And then at the nose is packed with ammo and fuel and other high explosives and stuff like that. So yeah, it's another fragile one, but it does hang further back, and it is faster as well, as mentioned, though only by a few meters per second. Still pretty darn nippy though. The helicopter, once again, it's very simple inside though. It should remind you actually of the Escort, though I swear I didn't reference the helicopter when building the Escort. It just it's got some vague similarities to it. Very small engine packed in the middle of the ammo reserve, because why not? It actually has more ammo than the Escort, ironically. Decent AI core for just operations, but its detection is basic. It's only got visual cameras for the most part. Did I give these things remotes? I did not. I think I was going to, which is why the AI core on this helicopter is actually beefed up a bit, but yeah, I think the AI core is actually overdeveloped on this thing. Might need to turn that down a little bit. And then we get into some jet engines with correction thrust at the nose. Like, that's the only jet engine, aside from forward movement, just one in the nose to keep it stable. And then the ones at the back are just for movement. So yeah, that is the thing. Turning and altitude are actually done by steady blades, which is a bit unusual for most of my designs, if I'm honest. But yeah, that's another quick look, a bit deeper in. Not very complex when you get down to it, is it? Right. The missile support units. This thing has no armor. I'll tell you that now. The metal plating is purely decorative blocks. So if this thing gets hit, it's going to go up like, well, like something highly explosive. In fact, it's almost entirely packed with ammo, so it's very fragile as well. If it's being hunted, it's going to die. But there's the missile system, the turrets. Press B again, here we go. So there's a whole bunch of ACBs, because this thing was built before the new AI control systems came out. Using the point at option would work very well for this. This thing actually does it the old manual way with an ACB bank. Then PIDs at the front. That is the sum size of its AI core, just like this little bit here. Oh dear. And then over on this side we do actually have some extra detection, which is piston mounted, so that pops out underneath it when there's actually a target. So this thing was built for remote guidance. Did I leave it with remote guidance? I did not. I suspect a missile update actually broke it and changed it, because this thing was remote guided for when I first built it, I recall. I'm going to have to look at this. Maybe this craft was remote guided. I think it was actually, this one. Not the escort though, that one was always dumbfire. Fire and forget missiles. But this guy, I think, was remote guided, so yeah. FTD, you've been messing with my missiles. Stop that. They are high explosive. They're not meant to be meddled with. Okay, moving on. We actually have a completed, or near complete, boat, which it was built on some of my old work for compact laser turrets. So I've got a double-barreled laser turret here, which does about 600 damage per shot and fires once per second. So it's a bit slow firing, but it is actually a pretty small craft. Weighs in at 17,000 resources, so that's not too bad. What's its speed? Max speed isn't calculated properly. It's definitely way faster than 4. Oh well. I think I was getting to the habit of just mucking around with holes at this point. Basic detection on the nose, but again, it's like, oh yeah, there's some detection on the back. It's not really meant to get shot at, I don't think. Let's see what its equipment is like. Okay, so it's got, I think it's only got 1 meter armoured hull, apart from the forward deck. AI's up at front, propulsion. There is actually a control station. There is, it's all running on a compact internal combustion engine, which is not too shabby. Its power rating is 3,000, not too bad. Though the laser actually takes 2,400 of that, so it's like 600 power for the rest of the craft. It does have shields. I wasn't sure if it had shields or not, but it has actually got some shields installed. And then this is the laser core, which is puny, honestly, but if you look at it, it does do 1,200 per second at 33 AP. Though, of course, split between two, that means 600 per shot in sustained fire, which is not too bad, actually. Good for light stuff, but against heavier targets, it's going to struggle a little bit, but that's not really its intended purpose. It's meant to be like, keep the small flies off it, kind of thing. So I think that one's ready to deploy as well, quite definitely. And lastly, we have the other complete design, which is the Barracuda submarine. Yes, this pancake of a craft is not a boat, it's not a flyer, it's a submarine. And I'll give you also a look over this thing. I've spent like half the episode just looking at designs, which I'm going to be bringing in, honestly. I don't know if that's good content or not, but I'm doing it, so there we go. And as you can see, this thing is pretty much ram-packed with all sorts of doodads. It's got self-repair, which most of the other craft actually don't, now that I think about it. It's got side-mounted torpedo gantries, which these guys are thumper, frag, remote guidance. So yeah, lots of remote. I guess there wasn't an update. I was just messing around with missiles myself, because this thing is older than the missile support unit. Right. In the side, we've got basic self-guided missile, torpedoes, just tacked in weaponry wherever, honestly. So that's its anti-submarine complement. A bunch of guided larger ones and some quick-firing self-guided. For anti-aircraft, it has got, again, some self-guiding small ones. It's got some medium ones for a bit of extra punch, though again self-guided, because honestly, as a submarine, this craft is not going to do too well tracking stuff on the surface or in the air. So yeah, that's why it's got all that. Though it does have these buoy launchers, sonar buoy in that one. What are you? You are a double radar buoy for extra detection. So yeah, it's got buoys which it launches to help track things. And if things get too close, it does actually have this quad laser turret which is on a piston. So if there's an enemy within 500 meters, this thing actually ratchets out to get it closer to the surface, and then it uses that to try and defend itself. Though one drawback of this design is it does have somewhat limited ammo supply, so again, it's meant to work in concert with other craft to get extra supplies as needed. Lastly, asymmetrical design in terms of a beefy AI core, and the fuel engine is on the other side, just over here, kind of spread out because it's a flat craft, but also built internally as well. There's not much by way of exhausts. I said a lie. I immediately found an exhaust. There is an exhaust, but yeah, it's also gets some extra cooling from radiators, though they're not connected for some reason. Why are they not? Oh, I think I messed up in the design a little bit. I'm going to have a quick look at this thing. It's a submarine though. It works well enough. Why were the radiators disconnected? Ugh. Anyway, moving on. There was meant to be building in this episode, but so far it's being a vehicle showcase. That's not quite what I was after. Okay, here we go. I've got my next line up from the menagerie for you to look at. Only 4 craft in this one, and then there are 2 more craft. It turns out my hunch earlier was right. I was short a flyer because this guy had decided to wander off into the distance, but I think it's because it's fundamentally unbalanced at the moment. Okay, moving on. This set of vehicles are a bit larger for the most part than what we've seen before, but they are also classed as, I'm going to say, incomplete or half-built, rather than the last couple of craft which are concepts. So, let's have a look-see. You might have seen this guy in a couple of streams and things I've been involved with, if you are keeping track of those. And this is actually a hull right before the destroyer, as you can tell from it having appearance aesthetics like ladders on the sides, the ablative plates, that kind of thing, compared to the more slender one. By the way, the Javelin is officially a frigate now, just saying. So, this is another frigate, which is a missile-based one. It is 60 meters, a bit smaller, 65.6k resources to deploy. It's about as fast. It's a bit bulkier, but it's also going to shape up to be more expensive as well. Also, I should notice I think it's a bit slower too. It's a bit more expensive because it's actually only half built. It's similar to the Javelin, as in it has a lot of internal space left empty, mainly because it's missile-based armament. So, let's have a quick look-see at this guy. Ironically, I do actually have the hull for this guy saved as well. I could have spared a bunch of building work if I just imported this hull, but I forgot about it. So I do have a blank copy of this hull just sitting around in my blueprints folder too. So hey, derivative work, yay. So, getting inside the craft, we have got ammo supplies at the front. We've got a big beefy central engine in the middle. In fact, I think this is this one more powerful than the one in the destroyer? It is actually, by about half again. The destroyer has only got like a 5,000 odd horsepower engine. This one is like almost 7,000. Array for inferior work, I suppose. AI core is kind of meh. It's not that great. Then we get into the back section, and this entire rear section, by the way, is hollow. So, as I said, incomplete. This craft will need some work to actually get it deployed. But there is space for more tasty armaments or tasty systems or that kind of thing. It just needs some work. In fact, I don't even think it's got shielding. Has it got shielding? No, it does not even have shielding. Okay, so moving on. This craft has actually got torpedoes and missiles as its weapon systems. That's what it got fitted with. It's got broadside fitted torpedo launchers here, which are self-guiding, explosive, APN, so decent range on these guys. But it's got them already installed as standard on this particular hull. Well, the blank hull doesn't have them, of course. It's got twin jets on the back for assisted speed. The destroyer's actually got one snuck in the back there, but this one's got two. Moving on. The other primary fixed weapon system is medium gantries, fitting remote-guided fragmentation warheads. So, long-range, heavy-hitting missiles in a volley of 6 missiles. They are delayed launch, if I recall. Yeah, they are delayed launch. So, kicks out, turns, then fires the engine, and off it goes. So that's its long-range option. For general combat range, it's fitted with these blooming things. Let's actually get the hull back up. So, as you can see, these are actually missile turrets fitted to automatically fire at about a 40-degree angle. And these are continuous salvo missiles. Again, remote-guided. This craft is all about precision of its remote guidance. But treble frag, single fuel tank, so heavy on the warhead, light on everything else, and it just maintains a steady stream from these launchers almost continuously. So this guy just like peppers the enemy until they give up and explode or something. Lots and lots of missiles. Then lastly, if an enemy is getting a bit too close for comfort, it's got these guys on the sides, which are actually these guys are actually salvo fire pods. It fires a burst of 8 radar-seeking frag missiles at anything that gets a bit too close for comfort. They don't stagger fire, it's just like a single burst of punishment. It's like, oh, you're getting too close, here, have a fist in the face, go away. That kind of thing. And that's kind of what this guy is. It's a missile frigate. It doesn't have a name beyond that, though. Next up, this guy is called Test. Yeah. Well, I think this one isn't this one Test? Yeah, Test in inverted caps lock even. Yeah, that's his name. This guy was for a planned playthrough, which was heavy ordnance, which was going to be focused on mainly using large missiles. So this guy is just fitted purely with large missile weaponry. It carries 2 large torpedoes in a rear-facing mount underneath it. That's for anti-ship and anti-submarine use. So, torpedoes guide. And it's got actually hidden beneath some lifting doors in the side. So these corners actually lift up to expose the launchers. But you can see the back of one of them here. And this is another large missile. Active radar, target prediction, fairly heavy, but mostly about getting into position and firing. So it launches and then it ignites, so it's a delayed ignition type. The craft, however, is very much half-built. It's even got its test engine still of an RTG power unit. Normally I only use those when I'm poking around with the design before I actually try and do anything. And then it's got ACB controls, which I don't recall setting up properly for this craft, if I'm honest. But this was very much like sit back and lob heavy missiles, but it's a boat version rather than a flyer, which you saw in the previous set of vehicles. Yeah, here we go. Right, tons of ammo storage. There are the 4 main launchers, and that's about it. So as you can see, it's just not complete, really. It needs a lot of work, but it's one that I think I can bring together and bring into the design, bring into the actual campaign relatively straightforwardly. I mean, the basic hull's pretty much there. It just needs non-important things like power plants and extra weapons and shields and, you know, all the unimportant bits like that. That's what this craft needs. Moving on to another half-built. This time it is, the front is pretty much done. The back is a massive hole, but hey, details. This thing is actually a hover unit. It's intended to hover just above the waterline, and it's actually a long-range bombardment unit firing a 1600mm high explosive cram cannon. So it's against larger, slower targets or fortresses. It's actually meant to be like a siege breaker, for a call. Hang on. Yeah, Cram DD. Why I call this thing a DD, I have no idea. But basically, the Cram cannon takes up the bulk of the vehicle. Though it runs on iron drives as well, because the recoil of the Cram actually forces this thing down back into the water. So that's what it relies on to keep itself up, and what makes it a hovercraft in the first place. But yeah, potentially useful. If you guys are interested in it or ask for it, then yeah, I can see myself finishing this thing. It's got RTG power, just tucked in around the Cram. I'd probably replace that with a fuel engine or something. I'm not too sure. But yeah, this is the Cram system though. It's just like, yeah, kind of long there. Just packed in. So it's another case of like a glass cannon. It's somewhat fragile. Though if things get too close for comfort, it does contain a rear missile rack just at the back here, firing active radar seekers. So, you know, another last-ditch, many missiles to the face kind of deal. This guy is meant to stay far, far away from the target, and it's even got the ACB sets to try and control it a bit better. But yeah, that's that. There's not much more to say about it, honestly. Except that it's got a bit of an unusual shape. Very long profile. It's even slightly longer than the Destroyer. The Destroyer is 74, this thing is 80. Though that's partly because of its large cannon barrel. So yeah, might be worth developing a bit further. I'm not sure. And the last of the partially completes is, well, it's just a light flyer. Though it's more of a medium craft. Oh, I forgot costs actually. I mentioned this guy is 65. This concept is currently at 71 because, well, it's going to be expensive when it's built. It's got a lot of heavy missile parts in it. The Cram is actually 39.5 at the moment. It'll probably top out somewhere in the 40 to 50 region if I develop it further, because it's just going to be finishing the back section of it. The light flyer right now is like 6,000 and it's a blank hull for the most part. Very angular, very aggressive. It's made of metal, so it's got some durability to it. And it's actually kind of a modular thing, I think. It's what I was going for with this. I mean, this is probably the oldest of all these craft here, if I'm honest. Or something pretty close to it. It's got twin autocannon turrets on the nose, just in case, but I think it was intended to be like slot a weapon into here, slot a weapon into here, off it goes. The rest of the hull is there, so... yeah, it's been around for a while, this one. I think it's more or less complete. Yeah, let's see. It's got a RTG electric powertrain. It's got some ACB stabilization. Does it have an AI yet? Yes, it does. That is a very simple AI core. In fact, it needs to be tweaked because it doesn't need the AI routine card. And yeah, I think this thing needs some building out. It doesn't have detection. It does have shielding though. It doesn't have detection, but it does have shielding. What can I say? My build order varies sometimes. But still, it's definitely a bit of an odd craft, that I think. And that's why I included it in the list of vehicles, which potentially might turn up. Anyway, moving on. We've got 2 more designs left to go, and then I'll be building the Destroyer next episode. So, yeah. Okay. What can I say? Apparently I like to waffle on sometimes. Okay, here we go. Our last 2, which I am calling the concept craft, because these things need a bit more aggressive tinkering than previously. As you see, there was a slight difference in the build profile and stuff like that. So, let us begin. First off, we have this big guy. Main feature is a pair of 500mm cannons. In all honesty, in completing this thing, I would convert it from an even width build to an odd width build, strip out one of the cannon barrels and then turn it into a single unified 500mm based on how the APS system works nowadays. That would be more effective, plus this craft struggles for ammo like you wouldn't believe. It can't sustain 1 cannon firing at full rate, let alone 2, so yeah. Very much a support craft, this one. Let's look at it a little bit. Very aggressively sloped armor. This guy is hang back and shell with heavy weaponry. I seem to have built a bunch of craft like that in the smaller vehicle department. It's like small hull, big weaponry. So, current cost 29,500. That will drop a little bit as I strip out one of the cannon barrels. And they'll probably top out somewhere in the 40k region, I'd expect, if this thing comes to completion. And it's called Siege Gun Test. Well, technically, it's there is a second Siege Gun Test, which was going from another direction. For completeness, I might as well bring that one in. Where'd I put that bugger? See what I mean about having too many blueprints? Siege Gun Test, level 2. Here we go. Yep. Yeah, this one was built at the same time as that one. I'll just lock it onto here. We'll might as well bring that one in as well, but again, it's like concept stage kind of thing. So, this guy is meant to point nose on. The AI can handle that now with some of its settings, which works quite well. Stop poking it, please. There we go, that'll do. Right. So, yeah, Dama doesn't trust the point at AI. I actually do, because I think I've got it working properly for me. So, this guy can have the ACV stripped out and stuff like that as well. Also, I've noticed this craft, it was actually built with a warp drive in it. So that's a little oddity in the design there for you. So this craft is meant to be able to warp to dodge incoming fire by just suddenly teleporting a few meters away if something gets too close. But yeah, that requires a bit more teething problem, so that's why this is very much a concept craft and will need more effort to bring it into actual deployment. It's also why it's an even width, actually, now that I think about it, because of the warp coils and their odd shape. The warp drive is a bit of a pain to work with sometimes, if I'm honest. But that is part of why the back of it's shaped like that anyway. Right, so that's this guy. I almost forgot to give you a look at the internal mechanism, but the internal mechanism is kind of visible anyway, if I'm being entirely honest. But let's strip away the outer hull just in case. It just lets you see the warp drive in the sides of it. The rest of it is just like thoroughly exposed, so that doesn't really tell you too much more than you could already see. Though that is definitely one that could be functional. Built at around the same time, we have this next hull, which is a prototype strafer, of all things. That's, yeah, prototype strafer. Currently topped out 47.5k resources, but it's, again, half built, pretty much, so it's going to easily be in like the 78k range, maybe even more. But it's built about rapid sideways movement. So while this one hangs back and lobs shells, this guy is meant to get a little bit closer. It's got some armor on it to try and resist stuff, but it was meant to attack with rapid fire Gatling APS. So that's why it's got a bunch of systems dedicated to ammo, and about half of its internal volume, ignoring armor, is set for the cannon. And then it's got a lot of thruster banks in the side here, which allowed it to just like move sideways. Though again, the AI has options which allow this kind of thing anymore, so this thing will need to be reworked for that. Also, it wasn't firing blanks, just so you know. It was actually at a decent shell at some point, but I'm not sure what happened to it there. I think I was meddling with it, because, yeah, I mean, look there. There's a visible tracer there, and then it's like, it's all gunpowder. If only the gun shells actually worked that way, and you could throw gunpowder at the enemy. Maybe someday, maybe. But yeah, basically the entire APS cannon on this thing needs to be torn out and reworked, because, well, APS changes. It needs to be redone. I will show you the internals again, just for completeness, but nothing special here. You can already see it through the massive gaping holes in the armor. Yeah, battery pack, ammo, cannon. That's really all this craft has at the moment. See what I mean about it needing a bit more work? Yes. Anyway, moving on. Next we have this thing, which, as you probably saw, was Siege Gun Test 2. So this one was built at the same time as this guy here. And this one followed my more conventional approach, which is, this guy is actually meant to operate as a circle rather than that one which is like meant to point at. This guy circles, and as a result, it's actually got its entire cannon assembly mounted to a side-mounted turret just there. You can see the light blocks which hold the hull together. And then the entire thing spins around to point out the side of the craft. I'll show you what I mean really quickly. So, enemies over there! Turn the cannon! I think I abandoned this one because the heavy cannons are very slow to actually angle properly. But this thing didn't really care. As long as you were in a relatively forward angle, it could bring the cannon around to engage you. Above, below, it didn't really matter. It's like, yee, enemies all over there, just shoot at them. So very flexible, but also somewhat vulnerable because the cannon has to be turret mounted to allow it to do that. Also, the very slow angling means that this thing has to be... It can't race around too well, so I'm not too sure about this concept for a heavy cannon. If it was for lighter cannons, then yeah, maybe, but heavy cannon, not too sure. Needs work. And this is as far as it got before I stopped working on it. But right now it's like 31k almost in cost. And I don't have a ballpark for it because it needs a lot of work, this one. I wasn't even going to include it, but you saw me just spawn it in because, related. More content. But yeah, I think that is it. I know there are other designs which fall into the weight category, or other hulls I could bring in for my extensive collection. But this is all just from the quote-unquote more recent stuff, end quote. And it's the stuff that I can bring together relatively well, I think, in the current standard. So, maybe I can go digging for other hulls, maybe not. But to reiterate, for the incomplete stuff, you guys can weigh in on which ones you think I should bring in first, or try to complete first, that kind of thing. But next episode, we'll be having another build episode. This one was meant to be a build episode, but it turned out to be just a showcase of potential designs and stuff. But next time we'll be showing off these things. There's the original Thud gun, and here's 2 replacement cannons I've worked up for it. And then we'll actually getting this destroyer hull up to spec with the new weaponry, which by the way includes new some altered versions of the anti-missile turrets as well, which I'll explain next time. So yeah. Sorry for no action this episode, and there is likely not to be action next episode either, because I'll just be building the new destroyer back up. By the way, this is what it looks like with 2-meter metal armor all the way through, so it's pretty darn uniform actually, despite how it looks from the outside. So that's that, yeah. Yeah, this has been IronMark3. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope you guys have enjoyed this show. And don't mind that it was looking at vehicles the whole time. I will actually put that in the description and the... Maybe I should start giving videos titles again. Probably a good idea. But I'll mention in the description that this is just like looking at the vehicles for potential future use. Yeah. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all some other time on FTD Small Fries. See you all later.